My journey through the history of silhouettes has brought me to the Wayside Inn in Massachusetts to meet the SCONE group, Silhouette Cutters of New England. I have corresponded with various members of this group for years, but have never met any of them until today.
So Charles, I brought something to share with you and all the other silhouette artists. This is owned by a friend of mine who volunteered to loan me it, the original August Edouart.
Oh, wow.
From 1849. It's her X times great grandmother using a netting needle.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
You know that August Edouart had a shipwreck, and he was on his way back to France. He lost all his duplicate albums that were so precious to him. This is one of the silhouettes that was rescued from the shipwreck. And they were kept in Guernsey by the family in Guernsey for many years. But there was a famous collector who found the albums and in the early part of the 20th century brought them back to England. And she took them all out and she very carefully lifted the silhouettes from the backing paper because a lot of them, the seawater had damaged the backing paper. But what she did was she then remounted them all on plain white card. She cut out the bit underneath, which is still damaged by seawater, which has Edouart's writing on it and the date. He was the one that pioneered the freehand cutting that we all take for granted today. You know, until he did it, no one really took that seriously. There were a couple of artists who did it, but it was like a party trick. It wasn't really the way to do silhouettes. Real silhouettists use a machine. He knew that he was breaking new grounds with silhouette, and he was doing things that no other silhouette artist had done before. And he knew the work, for that reason, was valuable, and that future generations of silhouette artists ought to be able to see it, and ought to be able to know what he'd done.
Famous and prestigious
And he cut a lot of famous people,
walks of
especially in America. Yes, he was the person to have your silhouette done by.
It was done in 1849 and acquired in 1914.
Yes, that sounds about right. Because it was the early, it was before the First World War that they were brought back to England, and they were and these things, because they were taken out of the damaged folios and mounted onto plain card, they were then sold all over the places, and there were major sales in America, and a lot of families that had silhouettes done by Edouart recognised the family names from these labels underneath, and of course they would pay good money to have a silhouette.
And he
by
gave
Edouart.
them to the people who took care of him when
He gave all the folios that were survived, which was only about a fifth of the total collection, so about 20,000 silhouettes. He gave that to the family as a thank you for putting him up.
They took care of him.
Because they took care of him in the months after the shipwreck. I suspect that a lot of the silhouettes simply found their way to other families on Guernsey, because I think, the salvager's rule is that what you find you keep. And so there may have been more rescued than we think, but Edouart was heartbroken by it. For him, it was 25 years' work, and he'd kept a copy of every single silhouette that he had
And
made.
he kept a copy of who it was and
He
where
kept
it
who it was
was. and the exact
written
name.
underneath. He first of all wrote it on the back of the silhouette,
Yeah.
which you can see here, where they've left a hole in the backing paper. Then he stuck the silhouette in an album with a little glue of paper, and he rewrote that information underneath. And then he had a kind of index to each book, and he wrote in the index to each book every single person in the book and the date and time. I'm a little bit nervous about cutting in front of other silhouette artists.
It's wonderful. I love it.
Here I am. Great. Thank you. I like this here. I don't know.
Here we are.
Oh, that's